Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Calvin Butenhoff coming to you live from our studio at Radio Park here in Racine, Wisconsin. You can always join us. You can call. You can text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842, 855-75-CIVIC. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and the platform that used to be Twitter. Lots of things coming up on the show for you today. Really looking forward to our guest at 10:33. Wisconsin Senator-elect Jamie Wall will be here.
Nice.
One of the new Democrats heading into the Wisconsin Senate. We will talk to Jamie, want to find out what inspired him to run and what he has heard when he talked to constituents. And this was a victory.
This is a victory.
It's
Big
a victory. Time. So we will be talking to Jamie Wall coming up after the 10:30 news. An extra dose of recombobulating today with Dan Shafer.
You don't say.
Yes, Dan will be here at 11:06. Dan Shafer, of course, the author of the Recombobulation Area and also Civic Media's political editor. He will be here from 11 until 11:50. And then we're going to wrap it up, of course, as we do every day with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Today it is the creepy crawly edition.
I read this one.
I know. If you remember back to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yes.
That's the kind of creepy crawly we're talking about.
But voluntary.
Yes.
There it is.
Oh, nice. That is coming up at 11:51. I hope you can stick around for that. Wanted to start off, though, with this story from Wisconsin Public Radio, and I just feel so badly for this family.
Yeah.
The headline reads, this is from Joe Schultz, again from WPR. Authorities make contact with kayaker who went missing in Green Lake and has now revealed how he faked his death.
This one is this one's an interesting article to me, but go on.
A man, Ryan Borgwart, 45, of Watertown, went missing in Green Lake over the summer, but now has apparently made contact with local law enforcement to tell them how he faked his death and fled the country. They don't know exactly where Borgwart is, but they know it is somewhere in Eastern Europe. If you remember this story, and I do, they searched for well over a month.
54 days, it says in the article.
54 days they looked for this man after his kayak was found in Green Lake, overturned, along with his phone, and no other sign of him.
Yeah.
And obviously the body had never been recovered, but it was assumed that he had drowned. Not so.
No.
Green Lake County Sheriff Mark Podell on Thursday said the sheriff's office got into contact with Borgwart. November 11th, they asked him a number of questions, including to confirm he is who he is. And so Borgwart actually sent them videos of himself, like proof of life. So the sheriff says the great news is we know he's alive and well. The bad news is that we don't know exactly where Ryan is, and he has not decided to return home. Again, this man left behind a wife and 3 children.
I'm kind of without words because this whole thing kind of doesn't make sense, first of all. Fake your death, go move away. That's a movie. The movies have been made about that.
Right.
But the first line of the article says that that the kayaker made contact with the local law enforcement. Why would he do that?
That's an excellent question.
And then the other thing too is he says something to the effect of, I didn't think they'd make such a big deal out of it. I figured they'd just look for about 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks is a little less than 54 days, but that's still a lot of time and energy
and resources,
which, by the way, they said in the article, they're possibly going to try to get restitution. They said between $35,000 to $40,000 because that money was spent looking for him. On top of the fact that he says something about there was life insurance talk. Well, if you made contact, that life insurance money is gone. Is gone now. They're going to want it back.
Right.
And now you have further plowed your wife and kids into the ground for money. It sounds like a guy who does not really care at all, who's just saying, yeah, I'm in where I need to be, and you guys can try to look for me. I don't care. I'm doing my thing.
It is a really disturbing story.
Yeah.
And again, we'll put it in the show notes. I just feel so badly for this woman and her children.
Yes, and we were talking about this earlier, and in the article, the sheriff keeps saying, we're trying to tug at his heartstrings. The man doesn't have a heart. He doesn't care about his wife or children. I would say his ex-wife now, really, when it comes down to it. So stop trying to appeal to his better angels. He has none.
Yeah, it's tough to see where those better angels would come in on this.
No.
So apparently Borgward told the sheriff's office that he rented an e-bike
Mm-hmm.
and then hid the e-bike near the boat launch at Green Lake. Then he paddled his kayak out onto the lake along with an inflatable child-sized boat. So once he gets out into the middle of Green Lake, he overturns the kayak, throws his phone in the lake, and then gets in the inflatable boat and paddles back.
Yeah.
Gets on the e-bike, drives through the night to Madison. On Madison, he gets on a bus to Detroit. From Detroit, he goes to Canada, and then continued on into Canada. Got to an airport, and got on a plane. The sheriff says, we're continuing to verify this information, trying to put the dots together. We feel that this was Ryan's way that he could tell the entire country how he did it. So he wants to brag.
Yeah, I don't give a hoot how he did it, honestly. The fact is, we go back to what you were saying. Let's talk to the wife and the children and see how they're doing. Because that family is going to need therapy. And I'm not being funny.
And I would think financial assistance.
Yes, exactly. Because the insurance company's going to come knocking on their door, probably already saying, hey, so remember that money we gave you?
Yeah, we want that back.
Yep, sorry. And now your husband is liable for insurance fraud as well.
The sheriff says no warrants for Borgwart's arrest have been issued. He added he does not believe a warrant will be needed if he decides to cooperate and come home. Well, yeah. We're expressing the importance of his decision to return home to clean up the mess he's created. Our primary concern is that he gets safely back to U.S. soil. He needs to return home to his children. The sheriff said Borgward had personal matters going on, which made him believe faking his death and leaving the country was the best thing to do.
Is this sheriff the sheriff of Mayberry? Because he is very lighthearted and optimistic about what could happen here. This is a man who obviously has skipped the country, skipped the continent, and he's going to live his life. He has no reason to come back.
Borgward has expressed to local authorities his biggest concern would be how the community would react to him should he return. Well, yeah, it's called consequences, Bill. You think they're going to welcome you back with open arms and say, God, we missed you?
Oh, man, the local narcissist has returned. How you doing, Billy? My God, this man sucks.
Sheriff's office does plan to charge Borgward with obstruction of justice. They will seek restitution, as you mentioned, Greg, between $35,000 and $40,000. Not discussing potential federal charges that Borgward may face. Again, I saw a couple of things that hypothesized that he was in Uzbekistan. He had met he had met some woman online who spoke Russian, and it's just really, really sad for his wife and kids.
It really, really sucks. And honestly, if he is not coming back for his children, let's break it down even further. He put together a illustrious plan to leave the country because maybe there's some things happening. When you do something like this, it's because you're like, I'm going to fake my death to get the insurance for my family because we need it. And this is all like, I'll just do this. He does not care about his family. He does not care about his wife or children. He has no reason to come back here. They need to find him and bring him back to this country and charge him. This is ridiculous. This notion that he might come back.
And I'm going to continue. Well, right. And I'm going to continue pulling at his heartstrings.
Yeah.
So, he can be reunited with his family. I guess that's an honorable goal.
That's a real Midwestern America thing. Like, you got kids, buddy. It's possible for parents not to care about their kids.
Unfortunately, I think we see examples of that all the time.
Yeah. This is another guy who just he's worried about how the town will see him.
Yeah. He doesn't mention his wife and his children.
No.
And how they would react to him returning. But Yeah, you're gonna be you might be ostracized by the community, buddy, because they searched for you for 54 days, and then I am assuming they held a funeral
Yeah, of course.
and went through all of that, and all, again, his poor wife and children. I hope the community is going to surround them with comfort and support.
I really hope so too, because in situations like this, they can become the ostracized ones. Oh my gosh, did you hear about this?
Oh
Oh
yeah.
my god. No, just help them and arrest that dude. I really can't stress enough how little I care about this man's well-being. I want him to go to jail.
Well, I would certainly hope that if it should he come back, and I think that's really unlikely.
Slim?
Yeah, slim to none.
Yeah.
Although again, maybe things aren't going as well as he thought they were going to go in Uzbekistan, and that's why he reached out. And it's like, maybe they'll take me back because I'm not liking it here.
I figured they'd only search for me for 2 weeks. That justified it for him. Oh, you spent 54. You didn't have to do that. That's a lot of searching. Just find him, arrest him, put him in jail, give the kids all college educations on me. I'll pay for them.
And the trouble is going to be too is that some of these countries, I believe, including Uzbekistan, we do not have extradition deals with that country.
No. Well,
So
they haven't charged him. They haven't charged him either. So he's
right. Don't do this.
Yeah.
Can we just not
Yes.
I know divorce is awful. I've been divorced. Nobody likes to get divorced.
Yeah.
Get divorced. Don't do this.
This, as hard as you think divorce may be, and I've never been divorced, but I have friends who have. As hard as you think divorce may be, it's going to be a lot harder to do what this idiot did. And Uzbekistan is not a place to go to live out your salad days.
Well, you just don't ski. Uzbekistan doesn't come up a whole lot. All right, we were going to talk about this yesterday. Something happened on a plane recently going from Milwaukee to Canada. Let's not do this. That's on the way. You're listening to Matenaer On Air, coming to you across the Civic Media Radio Network. Good morning. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Sweet Cal B coming to you live from our studio at Radio Park here in Racine. You can always join us. Call or text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and the platform that Putz to Leon continues to actively ruin. Coming up after the 10:30 news, Wisconsin Senator-elect Jamie Wall from District 30 is going to be joining us. Looking forward to talking about his background and what inspired him to get into politics and what his district is like and what he's hearing and what he heard from constituents as he was knocking doors. So we're changing things a little bit in the Wisconsin legislature, certainly fairer than it has been.
It was a pretty good night for Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Local for statewide politics.
It definitely was. If,
Yeah.
if we're looking, and we are looking for bright spots, I won't deny that. Those are some bright spots. So Jamie Wall coming up after the 10:30 news. Dan Shafer, a lot of recombobulating coming up in hour number 2, so stick around for that as well. If you have been on a flight where there has been a passenger disturbance, I would love to hear from you at 855-752-4842. My husband and I really only travel once a year, and it's not like we're on flights all the time and run into this, but this is from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel from Drake Bentley a couple of days ago. Canadian man on an American Airlines flight from Milwaukee to Dallas-Fort Worth tried to open the cabin door while in midair. Yeah. It happened on an American Airlines flight on Tuesday.
Of course, American.
The department responding to a report of a disruptive passenger on board and did take one person into custody. The flight attendant telling police the guy got up in the middle of the flight and told her he needed to exit the plane immediately. You can't do that.
You can't do that.
No. He then began to get rowdier before pushing the 79-year-old attendant.
Let's put a pin in that one and come back
to it.
Yeah.
Trying to reach the plane's cabin door. So he shoves past the flight attendant, trying to get to the cabin door. 3 other passengers help the attendant and finally pin him down. Reports say the man's legs and wrists were taped in order to restrain him. Ultimately, the plane did land at Dallas-Fort Worth, with agents responding to the flight. The flight attendant had her wrist and neck injured because of the altercation. She was taken to the hospital but has been released. Passengers on the flight saying, he says, I'm getting off this plane. I got to get off. We're 30,000 feet in the air going 300 plus miles per hour. Nobody's getting off this plane right now. A flight attendant told Doug McWright she needed help. The guy's like 6'3", 6'4". I was behind him. I grab him, pull him back so he can't reach the handle on the door. They said they struggled for a little more than a minute. It was just chaos. Backing up.
Let's go back to that. Let's go back to one of the main points that really stuck out to both of us.
Backing up. He then began to get rowdier before rushing the 79-year-old attendant.
Out of my way, Myrna.
I'm an older person. I'm grateful to have a job.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't realize, flight attendants are far more than just waiters and waitresses in the sky, right? Since 9/11 and all of those things, and there are very serious responsibilities assigned to our flight attendants. And that took me aback that there's no age required or age limit.
So I looked it up. It said there's generally no upper age limit for flight attendants as long as they can pass a medical check and perform emergency procedures. So we actually don't know what this 79-year-old, I think because the story said he brushed past her. We imagine it being
some
a
frail,
spindly, like my name is Edna. Would you like cookies?
Right.
But she could beat me up for all I know.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
It's not fair for us to just assume.
It's ageist of us.
It is very ageist of us.
I'm sorry, the world. Don't cancel me, please.
We apologize.
No, cancel us. We'll get more famous.
Does that help?
It does.
Okay, we'll have to shoot. Something to shoot for. Anyway, again, I remember during the pandemic, it seemed like we were having to duct tape our fellow passengers at least a couple times a week.
Sometimes their mouths.
Because people were so cuckoo.
Yes.
about mask mandates and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I thought we had gotten away from that a little bit.
Well, I think the question I have is he simply just said, I have to get off this plane right now.
Yeah.
So I would love to know what's going, because correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not a flight equipment specialist, but I think it's almost impossible to open a door mid-flight.
Just because of the pressure?
The pressure and the way it's designed, you have to do a certain, like, I don't think you can open that door. You don't want someone trying to. That just scares the passengers. But I think it's near impossible to do it.
Well, if you are an aeronautics expert,
There's
and
the
you
word I
just
was looking for.
happen to be listening.
I said airplane equipment specialist. But yeah, but I'd like to know what this, because
is that even feasible? Can you even actually do that?
Yeah. And earlier when we were talking about Scumbag McJump the Country, someone said, sounds like he needs mental health help. Well, maybe, but I also think he's kind of like a dim-witted scumbag. But this guy, when you just get up and say, I need to get off this plane.
I have to get off now.
I want to know what made him do this and push a little old lady, well, push a person over.
An older person.
An older person over. Like, I want to know more about this person. He should talk to somebody. He should talk to somebody. He should also face whatever charges or whatever punishments.
Oh, yeah.
But like, you don't just stand up and say, I need to get off this plane without something pushing you towards that. I'm very intrigued.
Well, we'll see. Well, we will see if we can find out more.
Also, never flying an American again.
I guess we just have to be alert when we fly these days. And bring duct tape. I'm just going to start flying with duct tape because you never know when you might need it.
You might need a duct tape a passenger, and they might need a duct tape piece of fruit to the wall and sell it as art. Who knows?
It could be a door flying off, and you need to duct tape the door on. Just
if it's
fly with duct tape.
If it's a Boeing plane, it's just helpful.
Bring duct tape.
Yeah.
News is coming up next. Stay with us. You are listening to Matenaer On Air, coming to you across the vast, statewide, countrywide, potentially global Civic Media Radio Network.
Now the time has come to leave you one more time. Let me kiss you, then close your eyes. I'll be on my way. Dream about the days to come when I won't have to leave alone. About the time I won't have to say. Kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. I'm leaving.
Good morning, Jamie. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can. How about, can you hear me?
Yes, you sound great.
Excellent.
This is a longer break, so we come back in about 4 minutes.
Okay. About how much time do I have with you folks?
Let me check. Greg will tell you.
So we have you down for one segment for sure, which takes us from 10:34 until about 10:49. If we feel the conversation's going,
that'll go quick. Sure. All right.
Yeah, and if you have the time and we can do it, we'll take you for one more segment after that. But if not, we can make it one segment and we can move on with the day and we're good to go.
Okay.
Just two things. Calvin will be on screen. And when he starts to do like the 3, the 2, that means basically how many minutes we have left. So if you're talking or if we're talking, we're going to just make sure we wrap it up at the 1
right.
signal.
I saw him with his fingers up.
Perfect.
Coming out of the last segment. Sure.
Perfect. And then finally, when we're done with the interview, whether it's 1 or 2 segments, can you stick around afterwards? You don't have to do anything. We just want to let the information upload from the interview.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So don't dive off. Don't shut the window immediately and expect things to happen.
You can leave I can take you out of the actual StreamYard. That won't do anything, and then you don't have to worry about anything. All you have to do is let it wait for about a minute, and you should be good to go.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so
Sounds
much.
good.
We'll talk
Thank
to you
you
in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Sweet Cal B on the board. Coming to you from our studio at Radio Park here in Racine. You can always join us. You can call, you can text. The number is the same. It's 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Don't forget to download the completely free Civic Media app wherever you get your apps that enables you to call and text directly to whatever show you're listening to across the state. Civic Media app, CIVIC, civicmedia.us. Very excited to be joined by our guest. It's kind of a getting to know you segment. Jamie Wall is Wisconsin State Senator-elect for the 30th District in Wisconsin. Good morning, Jamie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. I was on a similar local radio show a few days ago, and the playing music was actually getting to know you. So...
Well, for people who do not know you, you represent the 30th District, which includes parts of Brown County, correct?
Correct. It's the center. It's the heart of the Green Bay metro area. So almost all of the city of Green Bay, plus Ashwaubenon, Alloway, Bellevue, De Pere, and just a little bit of Ledgeview and Rockland to the south. But core of Green Bay metro, can't go wrong there.
And you have been involved in politics for a while. It's not like this is something that you're completely new to, from what I understand.
Sure, on and off. I ran the state's private sector economic development programs, helping businesses large and small create jobs around the state. Gosh, that's almost 20 years ago now, back in the Doyle administration. So yes, I've had some exposure to state government before.
What was it this time around that you were like, I need to run, I need to jump into this, I wanna win?
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess you got to start with the new legislative maps. I'm sure you guys and a lot of people listening are familiar with that whole dynamic. But the Green Bay area used to be the poster child for the Republican gerrymander, in that it took the metro and split it up sort of three ways out to the horizon. My new district, the one I'll represent come January, actually has. Or had at one point, I'm not sure if one of them's moved already, but 3 Republican state senators living in it who are, about 3-4 miles apart from each other. So that gives you an indication of just how crazy that situation was. But they created a district that was winnable, and I was not particularly happy about the leadership we had from the legislature in Madison over the past 10 or 15 years. And I'm sure we can get into that a little bit as we go on here. But it was the combination of those two things. And it was sort of a look to your left, look to your right kind of moment, who's better equipped than I am to do it. And wasn't sure we found somebody who was. So yeah, I jumped in with both feet back in March. And after a ton of work and knocking on almost 19,000 doors across the district, I won a couple weeks ago here. Yeah.
That's amazing. 19,000. I can't even imagine. Knocking on 19,000 doors.
I went in for my annual physical a week ago, and my blood pressure was 104/60. So it turns out that running for office can be good for your health if you do it the right way.
Blood pressure problems, run for office.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Well, Jamie, first of all, congratulations.
Yes,
thank you so much. And thank you for being here today. We've had a lot of incumbents and people running for office. And one of the things we always ask is, you mentioned it too, the door knocking, going out there and talking to the people, getting to know what is concerning them. And, a lot of these individuals, especially with gerrymandered maps, had representatives who didn't have to campaign to win because they weren't threatened by an opponent. So I imagine there, one, had to have been people surprised to see, like, oh, there's someone knocking on my door. You want to talk to me? And two, what was the thing, I would ask, that connected us? Whether or not you knew or they were voting for you or not, but those connective tissue, whether it's economy, things like that. What was the thing that made us more alike than separate?
Sure. I mean, I'd say a couple things on that front, Greg. I mean, one was not so much an issue, but an attitude. And a lot of people, and Democrats, Republicans, people in between, would say something to me like, look, why can't you bozos just try to work together and get something done for us? And, and sometimes they wouldn't say bozos, but
I bet.
So, people have noticed the kind of, divisive my way or the highway politics that we've seen coming out of the legislature under Republican control for the past 15 years. And heck, I mean, the situation's even worse in Washington. So I think there's an expectation, and it's a reasonable one, that people try to look for common ground about how we can work together and move the ball forward and, try to work within the 30-yard lines instead of, way out in the fringes. So that's one message I heard. The other thing, and you mentioned a little bit, Greg, was economics. This is no shock if you've been paying any attention to politics in Wisconsin or across the country, but there are a lot of people out there who are feeling a little pinched by the cost of living here over the past several years. And they wanted to talk to me about how their grocery bills had gone up, and there's not a lot the state can do about that, but housing was definitely an issue. Just my house is worth not quite double what it was 5 or 7 years ago, and that's great for me since I own it and all. But if you're trying to afford that first mortgage or paying rent, and you've seen your rent go up with the cost of housing around you, that's a big deal. And then other things like childcare is a big deal for people who have small kids. Healthcare and the affordability of healthcare coverage is a big deal for almost everybody. So those were actually the issues I campaigned on. I was trying to meet people where they were, and I said we can do some things at the state level to help out with housing costs, with healthcare, with childcare. And given that we're sitting on a fairly substantial surplus, we can give some of that money back to the people who need it the most in the form of middle-class tax cuts. So those were, in essence, the issues I campaigned on. And I think that was a message that I heard loud and clear from people at the doors. And I think it resonated with the voters in a couple weeks ago, too.
Jamie, going back to the housing issue, how concerned are you about, because I keep seeing more stories about hedge funds buying up housing stock and hedge funds buying up more rental properties, and they don't have vested interest in these communities. And obviously it's for profit. It has to be for profit,
sure.
but still, it just seems so predatory and so dangerous to me.
Right. Well, look, I mean, I believe in capitalism, but I can understand why people have some concerns there. I mean, the people who run those funds are not particularly sentimental folks, and they're not particularly sentimental about my community or others. I haven't seen a lot of that issue arise locally. I mean, it may be in other parts of the state or across the country. One thing that I've tried to focus on when it comes to housing is just building more. I think we've been behind the 8 ball. I mean, here in the Green Bay area, definitely in other parts of the states, it's even worse, in other parts of the country. But we just haven't been building enough housing to keep up with demand, and that means single-family apartments, condos, townhouses, whatever, you name it. Some of the things I'm excited about is working on things like moving the coal piles in Green Bay up to the port at the mouth of the river. That'd create about 40 acres of developable land that can be developed right in the Fox River. Be great for the community in all sorts of ways if we can do that. So that's just one example, and there's probably other things, looking at zoning and working with local officials to make sure that they have the resources to encourage housing development in their communities here and across the state. So that was my primary focus when it came to housing.
If you're just joining us, Wisconsin Senator-elect Jamie Wall is our guest. He is representing Wisconsin's 30th Senate District, just recently elected to the Wisconsin State Senate. Going back to the gerrymandered maps, Jamie, and you said that there were 3 Republicans who, before the maps were changed to be fairer, who were living in the same district. I just can't imagine the level of smug, because you can live in this community for so long, and yet you do not have to respond to your constituents. You do not have to accomplish anything for your constituents, and yet you still see them once a week. You see them when you're walking down the street. I don't know. They must have a certain kind of armor or something.
Sure. Well, look, I mean, I think politics works best in any democracy if you have people who are incented to look after the people in the middle, the average working person. And if you have these bomb-proof districts, you're really not accountable to many people. Maybe you're afraid of a primary and you keep looking over your shoulder and you need to make sure that you towed the ideological line. But
no, Jamie, you just froze there for a second.
But it's a good look.
It is a good look.
A good smile.
If you have to freeze, and there you are, you're back.
Oh, sorry, it stuttered for a second there. Yeah,
that's okay.
You were saying?
Oh, I'm trying to remember what I was saying. But my hope is that with the seats that we picked up in the Senate, we were 5 for 5 among Senate Democrats in competitive races, and 4 of those were new seats. We bumped off 2 incumbents and picked up 2 open seats. So we're not in a majority, but we're within striking distance of a majority in a couple years. My hope is that with the closer margins now in the Senate, we'll see the Republicans kind of forced to behave like normal politicians, where we should talk about what works for the average Wisconsinite, and maybe compromise and cooperation aren't dirty words. And maybe we can get past at least a little bit this my way or the highway situation. But we're in this world because of a lot of hard work from me and the rest of people in the caucus, knocking on the doors and raising the money to make that happen, and also because we ran on issues that were important to the average voter. I mean, I was talking to people about just bread and butter, kitchen table economic issues, and not some of the silliness we saw at the national level, these kind of issues that are attempting to divide us instead of bring us together.
I mean, that's what I was going to ask and talk about, is that, regardless of who has the majority, there is now an incentive maybe to work together. And I think, and as you said before, to quote one of the people you spoke with, I wish the bozos would get it done. It might be more advantageous to those Republicans, and maybe they did want to work together and they were afraid of, I don't know. That's all speculation. But we saw in this past, in 2023, they didn't work a lot in 2024. There was his 10-month break they're still on, but we saw and heard about a lot of bipartisan work that had happened between the 2 groups.
Yes.
And we tried to highlight it every single time to show, yes, you can work together. Yes, you can get things done. And let the people know that, yes, your legislators do get into a room together and create change for this state. And I'm hoping that's even more so in 2025 now, because it's, would I like to see a Democratic majority? I wouldn't mind seeing that at all.
Oh,
But
of course.
I would much rather see working together and getting things done, especially when it comes to things like releasing monies for various programs, utilizing that surplus correctly, or at least entertaining great ideas for it rather than just saying everyone gets a check.
No, fair enough. I mean, just look, Greg. I barely know the people in my own caucus yet, much less the Republicans in the state Senate.
I'm
but
sure.
I have been reaching out. I have a list of people I want to talk to, and it grows by the day. But I'm checking some of them off as I go along here too. And I have called, or I'm going to call all of the Republicans whose districts border mine, and so far, no one has said, I don't want to talk to you. They're like, sure, let's grab coffee next week, or, have lunch and see what we can do for the community. Because, I mean, the truth is that, look, there's just some local issues, I mentioned moving the coal piles, creating a new housing development in the river of Green Bay. That's something people ought to be able to work together and agree on across party lines, just real meat and potatoes things. I sat down with the mayor of De Pere a couple days ago, and they're talking about, well, the state needs to develop West Main Street in De Pere in a few years, and we want to do it right because we might not get a crack at it again for 50 years. So
Sure.
can we redo the railroad bridge so we have a consistent 4 lanes instead of a pinch point down to 3 when you cross that bridge, and that backs up people in rush hour, and I remember seeing that happen when I was a kid, and that's a few decades ago at this point.
Yeah.
So just things like that. I think we can do the people's work, and we can do the people's work better if we work together across the aisle. So
We are going to continue our conversation with Jamie Wall. He is Wisconsin Senator-elect for the 30th District. Cindy, I see you on the line. If you can hang on, we will be right back. You're listening to Matenaer On Air, coming to you across the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Caliente on the board. Coming to you from our studio at Radio Park here in Racine. You can always join us. You can call, you can text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and the platform that used to be Twitter. An hour from now, we will wrap up the show as we always do with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Today, it is the Creepy Crawly edition. And if you ever have a thing that should not be, send it into Greg and me at janesays@civicmedia.us. JANESAYS, Jane Says at civicmedia.us. Delighted to be joined by our guest. He is Wisconsin Senator-elect Jamie Wall for the 30th District, newly elected after the fairer maps. And Jamie, I wanted to talk a little bit about, you had mentioned knocking on the doors and hearing people and how fed up they were with nothing seemingly getting done in Congress. So, because Greg and I talk about this all the time, and we live in politics, and this is the pool in which we swim. But I think Wisconsinites over the last couple of years really became acutely aware of the whole gavel in, gavel out, let's not do anything.
Sure.
And I think that hurt, the Republicans.
I mean, I would agree. I mean, I would always say to people, look, I mean, you can't take the politics out of politics, but maybe not everything needs to be a knife fight all the time. I mean, there's some of these issues where you could put four reasonable people around a table for an afternoon and they could, come up with something that would, make most people happy. Not 100%. That might be too much to ask. And I don't know. And I think, most people aren't political creatures. I mean, they just want things to more or less work around them. Are their streets paved? Are they safe? Are their public schools decent? I mean, those are all issues that came up, and obviously all the cost of living things that I talked about earlier. I mean, I think we haven't touched on really the schools much here yet. And 3 out of the 4 school districts in my state Senate district, went to referendum here, a couple weeks ago, and all of those measures passed by almost 2/3, somewhere right around there in the mid 60s. And that tells you people support their schools. But, I believe the state has been holding up its side of the bargain, and that the end result of all of these referendums across the state is that we're transferring more and more of the cost of education onto the local property tax holders. And look, nobody likes a tax. I get that. But if there's one tax people especially don't like, it's the property taxes. So, I mean, my hope is coming into this next session, we'll be able to work together and find a way to fund our public schools better, and at the same time, buy down some of that pressure on the local property tax rolls. And I think that's a win for everybody involved, for the kids and for the property taxpayers here as well.
Well, and I just don't understand how the state can mandate programs and then not release the fundings for the programs which have been mandated. That doesn't make any sense.
If you talk to any public school administrator, the first words out of their mouth are special education reimbursement. And it's a little esoteric, but it's a big sucking hole in their budget all the time. And again, the state with its broader and fairer taxing capacity ought to be helping out those districts and not forcing them to rely on the local property taxpayer as much as they are now. So, yeah.
I think people now, though, Jamie, are acutely aware of what kind of cost teachers take out of their own pocket. So when they say reimbursements, they'll be like, yeah, because the schools should be paying for the school supplies, not the teachers. And we have the money to do it. Therefore, we should be paying for the programs. And like you and Jane said, it's mind boggling to me that we would say, yep, we have a program. It's gone through. It's passed. It's going to cost X amount of money. We're not giving you the money right now. We'll see.
But make it happen. Cindy from Appleton has been very, very patient hanging on the line. Good morning, Cindy. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your patience. What did you want to say?
Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations to Jamie.
Thank you.
This is the first I've heard that you won, so I'm thrilled. And I would just like to say that he is going to be the type of candidate, a politician that represents all of us. So he's going to do great things for us. And again, congratulations.
Appreciate that.
Was that it, Cindy?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Right,
wow. Okay. I did, for the record, I didn't even put her up to that. So,
Now, Jamie, if all of your constituent calls can be like this every day, Jamie,
exactly.
You're doing a great job.
This is going to be a breeze, let me tell you. Right.
No notes. Keep doing you, buddy.
But going back to the schools, Jamie, I think it's important, as you pointed out, the vast majority of these many, many referendums across the state all passed, which just tells us that people do love their public schools.
Right.
Not everyone wants to go to a private school.
Oh, public schools, look, they give us bring us together. I'm whatever success I've had in my life is because, my parents worked hard, and the taxpayers back in the 80s invested in a good public education system for me. K-12. I was the first in my family to go to college, down at UW-Madison, and I'll date myself, but I paid $800 a semester when I started there for the first
Wow.
time, for one of the top 50 universities in the world. So, but obviously this stuff pays dividends. I mean, obviously all this, the education that the taxpayers of Wisconsin provided for me changed my life and made me a more productive, adult. And I've made some money over the course of the last few decades and paid my taxes and tried to, feed that system. And I think we owe the same thing to the kids today that I had. But, Greg, I think you're right that people do support their public schools. And if you look at what we did in the state Senate a couple Tuesdays ago, in focusing on these kind of issues on schools, on cost of living, I ran ahead of Harris, Baldwin, and Biden, and so did many of my colleagues. And I think that puts us in a good position looking forward in 2 years and in the future.
Jamie Wall, thank you so very much. Wisconsin Senator-elect for the 30th District. We will stay in touch. Can't wait to have you back. News is coming up next. Keep it right here. You're listening to Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is.
and welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Calvin Butenhoff coming to you live from our studio at Radio Park here in Racine. You can always join us. You can call, you can text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842, 855-75 Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter at the very end of the show around 11:51. We will wrap it up as we do every day now with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Today it is the Creepy Crawly edition. Think Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Creepy crawly kinds of things. I know. Ugh. That's coming up at 11:51. Right now, we're going to do some recombobulating with Dan Shafer, the author of the Recombobulation Area and also Civic Media's political editor. Nice to have you in studio with us, Mr. Shafer.
In studio today.
Studio.
How's that?
Yes.
Matenaer On Air in studio.
In studio.
Very excited to recombobulate with you all in studio today.
Well, let's start with Ben Wickler,
sure.
head of the Wisconsin Democrats.
We know Ben Wickler around here, don't we?
He's done a remarkable job. He really has.
Yeah.
And I would think a lot of people are crediting him with the success that Wisconsin Democrats saw in this election cycle.
Mm-hmm.
At least for the statewide races.
The best of any swing state, re-electing Tammy Baldwin, many victories up and down the ballot, including the guest who was on just before me, Jamie Wall from Green Bay.
It was great.
And so, yeah, I think, people have a lot of positive things to say about Ben Wickler's tenure as state party chair, which began in 2014. And now he is being mentioned as a potential candidate to be the chair of the national party, to be chair of the DNC. So I dug into that a little bit earlier this week to kind of try to figure out a little bit more what's going on, recombobulate, I guess, on what's going on there. And, a source close to Wickler told me that he is seriously considering running for the role. It is going to be a race. There are going to be a number of candidates who will be running for this. The vote is on February 13th of 2025. So there's a little bit of time. A lot can happen between now and then, especially, as Trump is inaugurated and so many different things happen. But I do think there is, a lot of interest about Wickler potentially taking the plunge here and running for a national position with this. And a number of, people in kind of Wisconsin Democratic circles I talked to were saying that, it would be a bummer for him to leave Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. It would.
Considering the track record of success that he has built here. But to bring that type of experience, to bring that type of success to a national scale, I think would be pretty interesting too. And we can talk about a couple of the candidates who've thrown their hat into the ring already. But the way one Wisconsin Democratic source characterized Wickler, called him a Goldilocks candidate. So saying, he's just right, Jane. He's just
fits,
right.
He just fits it.
Yeah.
All the things. He fits all the things.
Yeah. So they described him as somebody liked by both centrists and progressives, able to connect with big dollar donors and build a grassroots fundraising network, work with key outside groups and help build state parties around the country. Because I think a lot of the pushback that we're gonna have to see in the Trump 2.0 era is at the state and local level, especially with Republicans controlling Congress as well. So I think that is, and he knows how to build a state party. He knows how to, really transform things, and as he does in Wisconsin. So could that make him, just right for the role? Could that make him that Goldilocks candidate? And I think, just the overall sentiment is just, it would be a bummer for him to leave Wisconsin. But at the same time, I think, there's a tremendous opportunity. And I think the party really needs to be rebuilt, right? I think the Democratic Party needs to be rebuilt in a lot of ways. But I also think it's like, I wonder what people want out of this role at this moment, right? Because I think do you want somebody who's out there being a really vocal pushback against everything Trump does? Do you want that firebrand type of voice leading the party, leading the, I don't want to call it the resistance,
right?
Because that doesn't seem to fit maybe the way it may have 8 years ago. But do you want that type of leader, or do you want somebody who's going to rebuild the party? And I think it is, to a certain extent, it's got to be both, right? It's got to be both. You got to have somebody who's out there pushing back, and at the same time, building up the grassroots, reconnecting with some of the voters that may have drifted towards Trump, towards Republicans in the last few election cycles. And so is Wickler that Goldilocks candidate that can do, all of those things, both of those things, however you want to characterize it? I think that would be really interesting to see.
So who will some of his challengers be for this spot? Who are some of the other folks that names that are getting kicked around for this?
Yeah, so the names there have been a couple people who have already announced that they are indeed running. Martin O'Malley, the former governor of Maryland, is running. For him, it just seems like, they're bringing back a character from the first season late on in the show, and nobody's really sure why. Of course, he was one of the 3 candidates in 2016 to run for president, along with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. He was just kind of the third guy that nobody was really paying a whole lot of attention to.
He was like the Doug Burgum of that race.
Kind of the Doug Burgum of that race. And also, for those of our listeners who might be fans of the HBO show The Wire, one of my favorite shows. He is based on Tommy Carcetti, the character in The Wire. I don't know if you knew that at all.
I tried The Wire. It just
different discussion.
We can talk about that after. We can talk about that after. But also, okay, so Martin O'Malley's one of them, and then Ken Martin has probably been the name that has been more interesting, that officially announced that he is running this week. He's the head of the Democratic Party in Minnesota, so they've obviously also done well there. So he in the Minnesota's Democratic Farmer Labor Party, they've won. Tim Walz was elected. They won some really significant legislative majorities. They were able to do a whole lot, and then Martin is also already a part of the DNC, so he would be kind of just climbing up the ranks within the organization there too. Some of the others reportedly considering a run include Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow.
She's terrific.
She's terrific. She is, kind of become a rising star in Democratic politics. She had that moment that went viral a couple of years ago. She spoke at the DNC this year. She was the one holding up the whole Project 2025. If you remember that moment. Political strategist Chuck Roca, who worked for Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, also worked for Ruben Gallego in Arizona for his campaign. That's an interesting name there. And the other one that it was reported was former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
No,
get out.
No,
get out.
No,
nowhere near. Don't even let him in the door.
Go find something else to do.
That's like Martin O'Malley in that sense of well, we have the tried and true stable back here. Just why don't we go with what we know? No, this is not what they need. I think. You're all of these individuals you're talking about. What I think Ben Wickler brings to the table is one, with the exception of Mallory McMorrow, who has not decided to run yet either, and he hasn't. Right. Ben hasn't. He's the youngest one next to her. Yeah, he's 43 years old. If there's something we learned from this last election, especially with the DNC, the event was the energy, that young person, Democratic energy that was brought to the table, that I think Ben Wickler brings, because if you ever talk to him in your life, I didn't know he was 43. If you asked me right now, I'd think he's 32 years old. He's got a lot of energy. He's very, very positive. And I think what he's built in Wisconsin, especially from the fundraising aspect, speaks a lot to him. So I think he has a few things going for him that I think they're very, very important. And when you look at the list of people who have served as chair, it's, no offense to any of them, except for maybe W. Wasserman Schultz, who was not great.
No,
they look like stuffy politicians. They're all stalwarts in the Democratic Party. He's becoming one, but he's got that energy and zhuzh, if you will, and also
he's got the riz.
He'd be the first. There it is. Whoa. He'd be the first person.
Gen Z Jane over here.
There you go.
It's me.
He'd be the first. He'd be the first one to serve from the Midwest since the late 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. And I think for as much as all politicians, all politics are battering down our doors in the election time to tell us how great we are by coming to our state 38 times and spending $150 million to come here. I think maybe get the voice of the swing state that you love the most right now, at least, get that represented here. I think that makes a good case for Ben Wickler.
I think so too, and I also think the fact that he was a state party chair and not a politician.
Yes.
And I think that is interesting too. I talked to a Republican source for this story too, and they said that some of the more successful RNC chairs were state party chairs before that. So like Reince Priebus being a state party chair before he became the RNC chair, and then they won. Michael Whatley, who is currently the RNC chair, was the North Carolina party chair before he. So I think it is interesting to come from that space as opposed to somebody who is an elected official or has that more public facing type of job, type of persona. So you want somebody who's going to be able to be, like Ben Wickler can come on the radio. He can do a TV spot. He's successful in those realms too.
Yes.
But I think the more important aspect to me is really building the infrastructure around the party as much as just being the type of figurehead, like I love your guys' reaction to Rahm Emanuel and that name being there, because honestly, when I was calling sources for this story, that was what most of the same reaction was among those sources.
No.
A hard no.
Yeah. He was fun for like a month after the election, and then we're like, this guy, and then he's like, I'm running for mayor of Chicago. I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and the other name that has come up in the last couple of weeks, I saw something about Anthony Weiner a couple of weeks ago. It's like, no,
maybe a third
don't,
party.
No, don't. That's a bad idea.
Join the Green Party, buddy. Lead them.
If you're just joining us, Dan Shafer is our guest, of course, the author of the award-winning Recombobulation Area, and he is also Civic Media's political editor. Before we go to break, Dan, quickly, if Ben Wickler would ascend to the head of the DNC, who's gonna slip in and take his place? We'll kick that around.
There are a lot of domino effects.
All right, we'll kick that around
when
when we come back. Stay close. You are listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll be right back.
What else to do about it?
Good morning and welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Sweet Cal B coming to you live from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us, call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and the platform that Jabba the Musk continues to actively ruin. We are joined in studio by Dan Shafer, of course, the author of the award-winning Recombobulation Area and also Civic Media's political editor, talking about Ben Wickler, head of the Wisconsin Committee, Wisconsin Democrats in Wisconsin.
That's right.
Well
Head
said.
of
In the state in which we live.
The chair of the Democratic Party of
Thank you,
Wisconsin.
that thing.
Yeah.
Words
And,
are hard.
throwing
Words
his-
are hard.
Look,
Had it-
it's Friday. We're discombobulated.
We
That's
are.
that's why I'm here, Jane.
To help bring us back. Okay.
Yeah.
And now he's, looking to throw his hat in the ring for the head of the DNC.
Mm-hmm.
If he would leave, who would take his place here in Wisconsin?
Yeah, so I think this is another important part of the conversation because there are a few interesting kind of ripple effects with this. So let's go through the timeline first. So the vote for this DNC chair role is February 13th.
Okay.
The Wisconsin spring election is April 1st.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That's yes, I know.
It's going to be here really
It's going to
quick.
be here really quick. We
Yes.
saw the Democratic Party of Wisconsin endorse Judge Susan Crawford this week.
Yes.
Yes.
So that is another very much everything on the line race that we have in Wisconsin, as if we're not all absolutely gassed from the last few months and all of the campaign things that have happened in Wisconsin there. And from what I hear, that Wickler really wants to see that through. Really wants to see that election through.
Yeah.
As far as because of keeping that liberal majority on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, tremendously important.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so important. And I hope folks realize that if we don't keep a Democratic majority in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, we could go back to the gerrymander.
There's a lot that we could go backwards on.
Yes.
and,
And
and
we're
I
gonna go
think that was
back-
such
we're
a
gonna go
hard fought.
backwards.
That was such a hard fought victory that took like flipping a number of seats on the Wisconsin Supreme Court year after year after year,
Yes.
and for if that were to be only a short lived experience that was only like 2 years, that would be a real problem. So I know that's very important to him. And then in June, that's when Wickler's term as party chair ends. And so I don't know that he would necessarily run for another term anyway, because it's been 5 years now or something like that since he's been party chair. I believe that's how long. I don't know exactly how long the terms for this are, but his term would end in June anyway. So we have this February vote, you have the April election, and you have the June expiration of the term there. So all of those factors at play as well. Another thing that a number of the sources that I talked to this week told me was that Wickler does have some interest in, at some point, running for statewide office. Now, whether that's governor in 2026,
Interesting.
whether that's senator in 2028, that remains to be seen. We just got out of the
Yeah,
election.
that's-
There's way too much speculation happening. But I do also think that there are a lot of political futures, a lot of, decisions from Democratic leaders across Wisconsin hinging on what Governor Tony Evers is going to do for 2026. Now, is he going to run for another term? We don't know yet. Again, we're just coming out of the 2024 election. He's not going to come right around and say like, "Hey, I'm running for re-election. Hey, I'm not doing anything." He's probably more focused on, okay, what's next year going to look like with the budget? What are all these different conversations that we're going to have? We have a different makeup in the legislature.
What can we get
lots of
done?
different. What am I going to have to do to counter some of what Trump might be doing at the federal level, and just like the changes that will happen there? There's a lot to consider that are probably first, top of mind before getting to what his political future is. But at the same time, Tony Evers will be 75 in November of 2026. I don't think that when he ran for re-election a couple of years ago, I don't think there was a great expectation that he would seek a third term. Now, he is in a more he is, based on the Marquette polling, he is the most popular politician in the state of Wisconsin right now. And so would you want to, have a big primary or something like that? Or have another situation where Evers would run for reelection. That's a question that I think Democrats will have to ask in the months to come here, because I think that's a big part of it. And then if he chooses not to run for a third term, would Wickler be at the top of that list? There are a lot of names that would jump into the ring there.
Sure.
I reported last year that Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley is interested in running for governor in 2026. Attorney General Josh Kaul has discussed this possibility. Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson has. You've got Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski, Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez, State Senator Calder Royce, who ran a few years ago. Like, there's a lot of names for Democrats have a pretty solid bench compared to where they were a number of years ago. So that could be a big weird primary, and you don't know if Wickler would necessarily emerge in a field that big either. So
Wes from Middleton texted in, listening on WRCE. Ben is the man. His turnaround of the state party has been remarkable. Wisconsin Dems let Walker destroy them. Then they took an 8-year hiatus, didn't even bother trying until Ben came back to town. I wish he would stick around through 2026. We're not done with our work here. We need to make a serious effort to get a Democratic trifecta, even if only for a few years, to finally repair the Walker-Voss regime that we are still living under.
And that's
a good point.
And that's one thing I thought about with regard to Ben Wickler, is that he's universally loved in the state for the party. And I feel like if he's going to step down, he may have a person or two in mind who he thinks are the right calls to replace,
follow him.
and his endorsement of those individuals
successor of
would
sorts.
would go far in the voting process, and someone he trusts to keep that legacy going.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an important part of that too, because I think we'll see that, kind of come to a head, regardless of how these decisions are made over the next couple months. Like, come this summer, we're gonna have to figure out who the party chair for the Democrats is going to be going forward. I have to imagine Wickler has a pretty good idea of what he wants to do next too. So
News
we'll
is
see.
coming up next. We will keep recombobulating with Dan Shafer from the Recombobulation Area. It's an extra dose of recombobulation.
That's right.
Stick around. You're listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
Frozen Wisconsin. I need you to recombobulate me. I want you to recombobulate me. I need you to recombobulate me. Won't somebody recombobulate me?
welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and the Board Lord coming to you from our studio at Radio Park here in Racine. Join us. You can call, you can text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and the platform that used to be Twitter. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we will wrap up the show with This Shouldn't Be a Thing, creepy crawly edition. Think Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom kind of creepy crawly. That'll steer you in the right direction.
Whenever I just think of eating monkey brains, that's what I think of too.
That can be what part of it too. Dan Shafer is here from the award-winning Recombobulation Area, and he is also Civic Media's political editor. And we're going to lighten things up just a little bit for our last segment with you, Dan. You got to see someone that I love and adore. I would be like stalker scary if I ever got to meet Jon Stewart.
Yeah, that's right. I got to see Jon Stewart at the Riverside Theater last night.
I didn't even know he was coming to town.
I mean, I think it was one of those things. A lot of people who I was talking to at the show was just like, oh, this must have to do with the fact that they didn't have the Daily Show at the RNC.
Oh, that's what it was.
I have to imagine there's some connection there. They talked about maybe coming back for whatever. But yeah, this was a birthday gift from my wife. So shout out to Katie.
Well done.
What a good man.
What a woman.
Yeah, that's right.
Gift from her to you?
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
So that was my birthday gift, was going to see one of my absolute all-time favorites in Jon Stewart. So it was a real treat to be able to see him in person, see him be able to do a stand-up set, or it's you're so used to seeing him behind the desk, scribbling on the paper, chuckling to himself, doing all of the Jon Stewart things,
all the voices,
and of course there was a lot of that. But seeing a full Jon Stewart stand-up set was very cool. And a good reminder that I think political comedy is just so needed in this day and age.
Yeah.
We've got to be able to laugh at what's going on.
You got to find some laughs, otherwise, we're all going to cry all the time, and you can't do that.
Exactly. And I think as, the left and whatever left of center media or just the people on this side of the aisle more broadly, I think going forward in the Trump era, I think comedy is going to be a really important part of things, and not being so self-serious about all of it. And I think that's what Stewart returning to the Daily Show has been so refreshing in a lot of days, because I think some of the comedy that's come out of the Trump era has just been so pearl clutching and whatever. And Stewart will come in and he just makes fun of everybody. And I know he's got a certain perspective. He comes from a certain side of things, but he really does try to skewer everybody in a sense there, and really, just laugh at the liberals as much as he's ripping the conservatives and right wingers too. So,
yeah, I think that good political comedy is coming from the point of trying to give voice to the voiceless and trying to point fingers at hypocrisy and big power, big money, those types of things. What was I I had a point to something and then it's totally escaped my brain. But he just signed a contract to do another year of the Daily Show on Monday. So he'll still be around doing it. And I think as long as the FCC allows, they should keep. Yeah, comedians need to keep doing that. Now, I will say this to you non-comedians out there: do not say to a comedian, well, you're going to get a lot of material, because people have said to us, you're going to get a lot of material from Trump, aren't you? Gladly not have this I'll give up, as Pat Oswalt said, I'll give up the 10 minutes of jokes I wrote about George W. Bush. But while they're here and there's nothing we can do about it, it's time to write that good material that represents a voice that says, you are in fact ridiculous. You are the great and powerful Oz, who's nothing but a huckster trying to take us for all of our money while making you laugh really hard at it.
But I think, too, to your point, Dan, I think it's important for comics to be able to laugh at both sides and point out the pomposity of both sides. Corey Ryan Forrester, who's been on our show, frequently talks about liberals are annoying, and because we are. and so, to acknowledge that and embrace that, I just think that that's a better idea than making it all that the other side is the only area in which laughs are given.
Yeah, and one of the things I don't want to talk about the set exactly.
Do all of his jokes.
Yeah, I'll
now.
do the full hour-long set that from memory. No, but he talked about what was his? Was it his first show back when he was doing the Monday shows and stuff like that, where he talked about Biden's age?
Yeah.
And he talked about the reaction to that, and the people going, "Oh, how could you say that?" He's
Yeah.
But I think it's just like, yeah, it was important for him to say that. It was important for a lot of people to actually come forward and start saying that at that time. So I think that was one of the things that stood out to me with that. But I also was just kind of thinking about, obviously, Greg, you're an actual comedian who has done these kinds of things, but like the state of comedy in the last few years has just been this like, oh, are you offended? Type of, oh yeah, we're gonna trigger you now. Oh, look at these woke libs, we're cancel culture. Forget you guys. I'm gonna say what's really on my mind, and it's just like it's almost positioned the comedy world as like, you're rebelling against the Biden administration or rebelling against the liberals, but somehow taking the side of like the richest people in the universe,
the richest people who like align with Nazis.
Right, exactly. And so that's your rebellion, I guess. That's your speaking truth to power, talking about how awesome the richest guy in the world is, who's trying to like take away all of these different rights and whatever. Yeah. So I think going forward, there's been this conversation like, oh, the left needs its own Joe Rogan or something like that, which I think is the wrong way to frame things. But I think it is. I think you have to be able to laugh at yourselves. And I think there has been points on the left where Democrats have been a little bit too self-serious and not self-deprecating enough, because we should be making fun of ourselves because we are sometimes ridiculous.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
I think absolutely. I think I don't know. I'll say it right now. I think liberals can be funnier than conservative people. And what I mean by that is, like, if you are a conservative and you are a stand-up comic, there's absolutely no reason why you can't be absolutely hilarious. The problem with conservative comedy and that anti-woke, I want to trigger you, the woke mafia, woke mother, all that crap. They don't care about the joke. I care about a joke. I care about the craft. I care about the writing. I care about I care about like the play on words. I care about all that from start to finish. And I think anybody, regardless of who they vote for, is capable of that if they work at it. What I don't like is what they do, which is it's all about reaction. They don't care about the joke. If I tell a joke about women to Jane, and what I'm doing is I make a really, misogynistic joke towards Jane, I say that I want Dan's laughter too, and then that laughter makes me feel good, and I want your outrage, and that makes me feel good. I don't care that I actually made someone laugh. I care about that's why like all social media is based mainly on negative interaction now. That's how you say some of the worst things, and most of those people online, those influencers, they don't believe in this stuff. They don't care about those things. They just know they're going to get 2,000 comments saying you are the devil, and that's what allows them to create partnerships with raw milk companies and say make $500K a year on one deal. So I think that
all
comedy
the supplements that they're also selling with these,
I think
they all work 100%. Just ask Dr. Oz.
Yes.
And you brought that up. The left needs a Joe Rogan. I think that's horse pucky. For the longest time, for years, the right needs a Jon Stewart. They're never going to get it. Because,
isn't that Greg Gutfeld now?
No, he's not even funny. He just happens to be on late night. Don't insult my art.
I'm just throwing it out there.
You triggered me, Jane.
Ooh, touchy.
But the problem with that kind
Jane needs her own special now. Jane Unfiltered. Triggering woke Greg.
I'm so woke. The thing is that the problem with the notion of a conservative Jon Stewart is just what you said. Jon Stewart can poke fun at everybody and take the poking. He can make fun of the things he believes in when he sees the problems they're in, and he can accept the jokes and he can laugh at them. The Republicans do not do that. They have no penchant for sarcasm, irony, wit, or any sort of like self-effacement. It's their way or the highway. If you don't like it, you're the woke, and we're going to make fun of you for what you love. And the notion of having a liberal Joe Rogan is so funny to me, because the idea of Joe Rogan is just a thumb with a mouth, and he takes in information how he sees fit and says nothing. And he has on some of the worst people on earth to talk about terrible things and does nothing to challenge them.
Yeah,
right.
He's just kind of riffing,
exactly.
right? It's like but I think people do enjoy that. Like, it's a very popular podcast.
They do.
But I think that the part of it that I think is something that is worth paying attention to is having a podcast or some sort of comedic element to delivering the news. And I think that was, as my millennial liberal mind growing up in the Obama years with Jon Stewart on TV every night, like that was how I processed the news in so many ways. But I think at the same time, it's just like, that's what we have to look at a little bit more going forward. And it has to, the different media ecosystems of this and all of that has to be, it can't be so self-serious. And there has to be some comedy. There has to be a different access point for people to get to the news. And I think that's what worked about The Daily Show and Colbert, especially,
Yes.
in that day and age. And I think that is partially what works about the Joe Rogan of it all, is just that people aren't necessarily, I'm really into politics, I'm going to listen to Joe Rogan. It's somebody who might be into UFC or comedy or just all sorts of different things. But I think you have to give people who might not otherwise be part of the political process a path in.
That
right?
makes sense,
And I think
sure.
that is the thing that is actually we should be paying attention to, as far as like, should there be a Joe Rogan of the left? There needs to be more access to the political conversation from places that are not explicitly political, right?
I agree with that. I think it's like my whole thing with because when people say the liberals need a Joe Rogan, to me, Joe Rogan's a guy who allows people to come onto his show and say whatever they want, are rarely fact checked.
Yeah.
And shows like, John Oliver doesn't have guests anymore, but like, Jon Stewart, they're constantly, they employ some of the best fact checkers in the business.
Yes.
They want to make sure that the information they have is stellar. And if you went on a Jon Stewart podcast that was like Joe Rogan and you said something, he constantly be checking you, saying, no, you are wrong. Well, I mean, like his interviews on his Apple show, he constantly checking you when you're wrong. And I think the thing that people really do love about Joe Rogan isn't so much about the information they're getting, it's the bias their biases that are being reinforced through the people he has on his show. So like, you like Elon Musk and Twitter, and you want to go back to the day when you could slap a woman's bottom and they should take a compliment. He's going to have those guys on, and you can feel good about yourself. And he makes $100 million+ on it. So I don't think we need a Joe Rogan. I think what you said is perfect. We need access points.
Yeah. And I think Democrats and people on the left have to stop being so precious about where they're having their conversations too.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just like, we have to do only this interview on CNN and this one on The View and like this one, whatever. Just go everywhere and have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like Donald Trump just won re-election by saying whatever was on his mind for like a million different bro podcasts. And there's research that has come out already showing that moved people, and that like younger men especially are gravitating to Republicans because they're hearing I don't want to say authentic conversation, because that would imply somebody's telling the truth, but maybe a genuine one, I guess, right?
Yeah, they're speaking their mind. They're not filtering this stuff. He's just saying what they want. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a whole nother discussion about young men and where young men are getting their information and what they're doing with
the
that
media diet.
information.
Well, that was one thing too. Like when I was doing my reporting in that Fox Valley story, I talked to a couple of the editors of the Advanced Titan there, both women, and they were saying like just about every young man on campus is listening to Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. He's incredibly popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to counter that. I don't think that's very healthy, but that's
Jane,
just
you're
me.
up.
No.
Yeah, oh, great.
Jane Matenaer is the Joe Rogan of the left.
Oh,
is that-
yes. Come on, and I'll just reinforce your biases. Sounds good to me. Thank you so much, Dan Shafer from the Recombobulation Area. Make sure you subscribe. It's fantastic. When we return, this shouldn't be a thing. Creepy Crawly edition. Stay with us. You're listening to Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Dr. Slide on the board. Coming to you from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us. You can call. You can text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and the platform that used to be Twitter. Coming up next week, Dr. Kristen Lyerly will be here on Monday. At 11:06, there are some recent developments as far as abortion and abortion care go in this country. One particular thing going on in Georgia that I think is really worth talking about. Also on the way next week, Luke Mathers will be here on Tuesday. Hans Breitenhauser.
Brighton Moser.
Brighton Moses is on Pat Kreitlow's show very frequently.
Monthly, yep. He was a monthly guest.
He's wonderful.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about tariffs and Wisconsin farmers and the Farm Bill.
An article that was actually written with him as they spoke to him about it in the Journal Sentinel. We'll talk about that. I'm looking for, Hans is great.
He is. He's wonderful. And then Maggie Dawn will be here next Wednesday. Also, Milwaukee Record. We're going to lighten things up a little bit. Second hour of Wednesday. Because it's the day before Thanksgiving.
Well, Jane, what's on the show for Thanksgiving and Black Friday? Like, what are we doing those shows?
Well, on Thanksgiving Day, we have a specially curated show.
Folks, you know it's good when you say curated.
It makes it all that more special. Specially curated show, and then we have guest host filling in for us, Matt Rothschild.
Correct.
We'll be here next Friday and next Monday. So that is all on the way right now. Though 11:53, Galvin, that means it is time for.
This shouldn't be a thing.
If you ever have a thing that should not be, send it into Greg and E. Jane says at civicmedia.us, JANESAYS. Jane says at civicmedia.us. This from WISN Channel 12. Headline reads, smuggler arrested with 300 tarantulas strapped to his body. Police in Peru arresting a man who was trying to leave the country with 320 tarantulas, 110 centipedes, and 9 bullet ants strapped to his body. The 28-year-old South Korean national was stopped at the airport in Lima, Peru earlier this month after officials noticed his stomach area looked bulky. A search.
What rookie got that job?
A search revealed hundreds of insects packaged inside Ziploc bags strapped to his abdomen. Police detained the man who was traveling to South Korea via France. Peru's environmental crimes prosecutor has opened an investigation. They believe he took the insects. He must have been collecting them from some part of the Peruvian Amazon. The tarantulas and the centipedes and the bullet ants, I don't even know what those are now in the care of authorities in Peru. I didn't know this. Tarantulas are a threatened species. They were all illegally extracted. They're part of illegal wildlife trafficking worth millions of dollars globally. Ugh. Peru is not the only South American nation facing problems with wildlife trafficking. In December of 2021, authorities in Colombia seized over 200 tarantulas, 67 cockroaches, 9 spider eggs, and a scorpion hidden at a suitcase in Bogota.
And a partridge in a pear tree. Boom, boom.
Are we buying these as pets?
I'll bet you. Okay, Jane, there are 8 billion people on this earth.
Yes.
Do you think a small collection of those individuals don't have
Insects?
weird insect collections?
Well, I know people have snakes and iguanas and lizards, and I know that there are people who are spider fans, but really, this is my pet centipede Walter? Really?
Jane, I respect your choices, and if you want to have a pet centipede named Walter, I'm fine with that. I respect your decisions. I respect your journey, is what more importantly. But if you tell me that I got to strap 300 tarantulas, which, by the way, I'm not even afraid of tarantulas. They're kind of cute because they're big spiders. Little spiders freak me out. I'm not going to kill them, but still, 300 tarantulas strapped them. You better be paying me a lot of money.
Well, I'm assuming he was expecting a big payoff once he got back to his own country, but not anymore.
Nope.
Not anymore. Nice try, though. trying to leave with 320 tarantulas.
Oh, sorry, my mistake. I apologize.
110 centipedes. Ugh. And 9 bullet ants. It's the centipedes.
The centipedes,
The
yeah.
centipedes freak me out.
It's the fact that they run so fast
Yes.
and they appear out of nowhere. Like you're watching television and then there's something pops out of your right eye. You're like,
Right up the wall.
What is that? Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Okay. Well, that does it for today's episode of Calvin.
This shouldn't be a thing.
Thank you, Greg and Calvin, and all of our engineers. Without you guys, absolutely nothing works. Thank you most of all for calling and for texting and for listening. It absolutely means the world. I hope you find some joy over the weekend, even if it's just a little bit, and you have the chance to share it. Stay close. News is next, followed by Todd Alba, noon to 2, Maggie Dawn, 2 to 4, Dom Salvia, 4 to 6 p.m., Pete Schwaba tonight from 6 to 8 p.m. Great lineup all day. Keep it right here on the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll see you on Monday.